Academy Faculty Development Program on Leadership and Teamwork for Education Excellence. We are engrossed in discussions since 6th of September, and we have had several esteemed speakers join us and enlighten us on different aspects. Following the similar trend, we now have our esteemed speaker, Professor Utpal Ghosh, joining us from UPES Dehradun. He will be delivering his talks on academic leadership. Without further ado, I request Ms. Priyanka to introduce our esteemed speaker and invite him for his presentation.
Hello, can you hear me, gentlemen?
So, thank you, Ashmit. So, good afternoon, all, and welcome to today's third session of Faculty Development Program. Indeed, it's my privilege to honor today's distinguished speaker, Professor Utpal Ghosh, Member of Board of Governor at UPES Dehradun. Professor Utpal Ghosh sir is an alumnus of IIT Delhi and FMS Delhi. He started his career in the oil and gas industry with Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited for a decade and subsequently joined Shell Oil Corporation, where he worked for 2 decades before joining the academic world. Professor Utpal Ghosh sir joined as a campus director at UPES. Then, after a short span, he took over a pro-vice chancellor for 3 years. He also held several key positions as president and CEO of UPES. Sir has been an exceptional leader and has immensely contributed towards established process for long-term strategic planning and institution building. At UPES, Sir has brought a lot of fresh ideas in teaching and learning, including online programs as well as hybrid and blended courses. We are really honored to have him today. Now I request Professor Utpal Ghosh sir to come forward and share your rich experience and knowledge on the theme of academic leadership. I welcome you, sir.
Hello, good afternoon, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir. Thank you. No voice output, sir.
Utpal Ghosh here. I've joined the meeting, but I'm not able to hear anybody.
Same here, sir. Audio is not clear.
Yes, sir.
Sir, you are audible,
नहीं
sir.
म्यूट में तो नहीं है.
You are audible,
We
sir.
can hear you, sir.
हाँ
Yes,
नहीं
sir.
ऑडियो वाले में तो किया हुआ है. और कोई और ऑप्शन है?
Sir, your audio is very clear, sir.
नहीं अगर क्लिक करूंगा तो म्यूट हो जाएगा ना?
Please don't click on that, sir. You can move your slides.
Arrow. म्यूट के साथ में नहीं, म्यूट के साथ में तो नहीं है. म्यूट के साथ में नहीं, it just says mute. ऑडियो ऑप्शन उसको अगर मैंने क्लिक किया सो इट्स सेइंग चेंज ऑडियो कनेक्शन.
सर
चेंज करें. ओके.
चेंज कर लीजिए सर.
Says you're using your computer for audio.
Yes, sir.
So
Computer
disconnect.
audio. No, sir. You can use computer audio.
हाँ नहीं, बट आप लोगों की नहीं आ रही है ना.
You are not able to hear me, sir.
So in this it says you're using your computer for audio.
Yes, sir.
Disconnect, call in, view.
Okay, say okay, sir. I think you are
Okay, sir.
audible to us.
आ रही है अच्छा
Yes, sir. We are hearing.
अच्छा but
Sir,
without
is
your
audible, sir.
voice that will be difficult
Is audible, sir.
until unless you can speak on my phone. I can put my phone on the speaker.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
अच्छा 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 चलिए ठीक है सो मैं फोन को ऑन रख रहा हूँ और मैं स्पीकर में डाल रहा हूँ इसको बट ओनली प्रॉब्लम विल बी इसमें ना एको होगा
इको होगा सर स्पीकर में मत
हाँ
डालिए प्लीज डोंट पुट इट ऑन स्पीकर
क्या चीज
प्लीज डू नॉट पुट ऑन स्पीकर सर
अच्छा चैट चैट में दे देंगे
So maybe
अच्छा
he can rejoin again after
नहीं
leaving
सो
the
अभी
speaker.
मैंने स्लाइड शेयर किया वो नजर आ रहा है आप लोगों को
यस सर
आ रहा है
No, sir. No, sir.
विदाउट फीडबैक इट बिकम्स
No.
डिफिकल्ट टू
No, we are not
वी
able
आर
to see your slides, sir.
बट वी
We're
आर
not.
सर kindly check your system
Yes, we
we
can
are
see,
able to
sir.
see we can see
We
sir
are able to see. Can see,
yes
sir.
we are able to see one person is not able to see maybe problem is in that in any system
स्क्रीन स्क्रीन दिख रही है
yes sir
Yes,
yes sir
yes,
लिखा
sir.
हुआ है
हाँ सर दिख रहा है सर
हाँ 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 that's right so let me just check अभी आ रही है नहीं
Yes, sir.
can you see the slide now first slide
yes sir
Sorry? That दिख रहा है and can you see the next slide now dialogue on educational leadership and processes
Yes,
okay
sir. Yes,
okay
sir.
so so we'll keep the phone on the standby and I'll kind of take you through so thanks for supporting in this connection Dr. Vikas Garg had reached out to me to share with you people some of my thoughts on higher education and some of the models which I really fascinate. So the way I have put this slide pack together is to have a basically a dialogue between you and the faculty and staff of Central University Haryana. I have put in a few models which I find of value, which I'm going to share with you. And the objective is to have a discussion rather than a one sided presentation. But before I get into that, let me just share with you a brief overview of the discussion format. The objective is to have a discussion with you rather than having a one-way communication. But given the communication challenge, making it participative could be a little more difficult. Uh, Challenge when you are not in agreement with something that I'm saying. If you have a contrarian view, feel free to express that. This is as much your session as it is mine. And I'm here to learn more and share a few of my thoughts and some of the models which I find valuable and useful. So, if I were to look at the Indian macroeconomic linkages to higher education, this is a map of India giving its dimensions and mentioning some of the key parameters from a macroeconomic point of view. So, I will not go through each one of them, but I'm going to highlight a few which are very relevant for the Indian higher education system. The first one is around labor force occupation. So if you see, while agriculture only contributes to 15% of our GDP, 50% of the labor force is employed in agriculture. And therefore, it is not sustainable in the long run. The objective, of course, is to educate people who are currently working in agriculture and move them away to services or industry, which is going to give larger number of employment. But that's easier said than done because the labor force is about 487 million. This gets more complicated because India has about 16 languages, and there is always a confusion. What is the best way to communicate? What's the best way to teach? You must have heard that AICT is starting regional languages engineering education from this year in 3 Indian regional languages. So you might have a view on what should be the medium instruction, but these are things that complicate matters than they should be, because as it is, higher education is a challenging task for a country like India, given the budget constraints, given the shortage of faculty, given premier institutions, etc., etc. But that's where we are. So that's the kind of background I wanted to paint. And moving on, if you were to look at the higher enrollment numbers, we are close to 38 to 40 million. So about 4 crore students are studying in our higher education institutions, of which 60% of them study in private institutions and roughly about 40% in public institutions. The numbers are reasonably large, about 950 universities and about 3,500 colleges. And then there is a whole plethora of regulators, including UGC, MHRD, Bar Council, Distance Education Council, and then you have a whole lot of people who are involved in accreditations. There is a combination of central universities and state universities, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So that's the bit of a landscape as far as higher education is concerned. Moving on, this is a pretty busy slide. What it says in a big way is that as of now, India has a gross enrollment ratio, which is the number of people in the age group of 17 to 23, the percentage of those who are in higher education. We used to be about 19% about a decade ago. Today, we are close to 27%. And it is still lower than most developing countries in the world, which are close to 45 to 50%. But we are growing at a good pace. And if the current rate of growth happens, India will have in the next decade close to about 60 million or 6 crore students. And if we reach the 6 crore number, we will have the largest number of students in the entire world, in any country, higher than even China. Because China had that single child policy, which they have recently shifted to a two-child policy, but that will take another 17, 18 years till such time those kids get into university. So we will have one of the largest systems in terms of the number of students, but our challenge, of course, is to find relevant faculty, relevant resources, etc., etc. So that's where we are. Also, the other dynamics is in terms of the number of people who are joining the labor force every year. India will continue to have a large number of people who will struggle to find employment. And therefore, the only solution is for a lot of our educated people to go abroad and start working, whether it's the Middle East, whether it is Africa, etc., etc. You might say it's good or bad, but I think that's the reality that we are, given the number of people joining the workforce. And also that the industry in India is not growing at a pace that we would want it to grow, and therefore the challenges around employing people. Services is the one which is growing and growing at a faster pace, but the challenges with services is that the level of education required is far higher than those in the industry, and therefore India will always have to kind of play between where do we invest in terms of our education, what kind of programs, etc., etc. So, with that, I will kind of take a pause and look at our higher education system and look at, if you see, the student should be the focus, and the other stakeholders in that environment are the parents and family, as you know, industry and other employers, civil society, as well as the government. But oftentimes, what happens is the university or the higher education institution becomes the central focal point, and the student becomes one of the bypass stakeholders who's watching that through. And therefore it's important for us to ensure that student becomes the focus. Oftentimes I think the way we engage with students in our higher education institutions is from a sense of authority, is from coming from a fact that I know more than you, etc., etc. But I think those need to quietly change. I'm sure there are a lot of progressive faculty who take students along based on who they are rather than from a position of authority or strength. Because the way knowledge is exploding, at least information is available to everybody today, and therefore, in today's day and age, it has to be a bit of a collaborative effort between the student and the faculty. So having said that, let me share my first model. Uh, I'm finding a little awkward with no feedback coming in. So I don't know, is there a mechanism to take questions, ask me to stop? Please use some mechanism to ensure that we can have. Otherwise, it's going to be a monologue, and I didn't want to have that
Sir,
monologue.
audience can type their questions in chat box. Audience can type their questions in chat box.
I'm just taking a pause to dial one of your numbers.
Yes.
I'm finding it a little awkward with no voice coming in. So is there a mechanism
So,
where we can address this?
yes, it's a good mechanism, sir. It's a good. We are listening you. We are
Otherwise, it will
hearing
be
you.
a very boring kind of a session with one person
Sir,
speaking.
we are hearing you.
We are able to listen to you, sir.
We are listening.
We are able to listen to you. We're talking about
Your voice is
collaborative.
audible. Sir, your voice is audible.
Your voice is audible.
Dubara, acha. Okay.
Whenever we
Yeah.
feel any query, we will ask questions from you.
Discussing.
Sir, you were discussing about collaborative teaching and learning. I think
Yes.
there is a stage where we have left it, sir.
Mm.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So I'll go to the slide that we were on. Yeah. So we were on this slide, and before that, somebody had a query on collaborative teaching learning. Okay, if there are none, let me just try and share with you a model which works both for faculty and students. And the way this model works is that different people have different levels of comfort zone, performance zone, and panic zone. And the way this works is that every person left to himself or herself will quickly shrink into their comfort zones. And if you are in your comfort zone, you will not be giving out your best while you'll be performing, but it will definitely not be optimal. However, if you were to look at the outer circle, which is in red, that's called the panic zone. And what happens again is if you push individuals, whether it is student or fellow faculty, beyond a certain level, they will get into a panic zone, and again their performances will start slipping. And therefore, the key for any faculty in any institution is to ensure that while you push people outside their comfort zones, but you should not push them so hard that they get into their panic zone, but remain in their performance zones. And this is a very well calibrated activity that you need to do. The challenge, of course, is that different people will have different levels of panic zones and performance zones. And it's important for you to understand what or how much should you ensure that this person is kind of challenged and pushed to a certain level so that they are in their performance zones. Does that make sense? Have you come across such students? I'm waiting for some responses. Huh?
Yes, sir.
No,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
no, yes,
There are some
yes, please.
students.
Yes.
There are some students. They want to do something difficult, challenging, and thrilling,
Right.
and they don't want a routine one.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is that you have to ensure that you move student out of their comfort zones, but don't push them so hard that you push them into their panic zones. And therefore,
It must be golden mean.
that's right. That's right. And that is something that as faculty members, we must ensure that we are picking up sign languages, body languages, performance parameters, that people are not getting pushed. And oftentimes, I mean, I've come through the ultimate system where they really push you hard at the IITs. I mean, 4 weeks into the semester, and you start with your weekly exams, every performance counts, etc. Oftentimes, I think we kind of leave youngsters who are 17, 18 years old on their own, each coming from a different background, and many of them really can't take that kind of stress. And therefore, while they are capable, they get into the panic zone and start underperforming based on their performance. So this is something which we need to ensure that we do it with students as well as with fellow faculty, because what works for student also works for fellow faculty, and each person will have his own level of panic and comfort, and you need to decide and define, because once you know faculty intimately, you will be able to work that through. Make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let me share another model, which is managing teams. So many of you are within the academic world, heads of departments, deans, or other academic leaders. This is a very simple 2x2 matrix which plots the effort on the x-axis and the ability on the y-axis. By effort means the amount of effort that person puts into the role or the job. For example, if it is a faculty, how hard are they working, etc., etc. And the y-axis is the ability, which is their inherent talent. So there are people who are talented inherently, and therefore that's their ability. So you can divide these two axes of ability and effort into 4 blocks. One where you have low effort and low ability. Let's call that group of people problem children. Then you must have seen a lot of people who work very hard, but they have limited abilities. Let's kind of call them strivers. So they're really striving to perform. And then, of course, you have people you must have seen who have great abilities, but they don't put the kind of effort that's required. So let's call them coasters. And then, of course, you have people who have great abilities and put in great effort, and therefore, let's kind of call them stars. So if you look around within your own faculty system, you will easily be able to identify each one of these 4 groups. So every person can be fitted into one of these boxes. So either the person will be a star, or will be a striver, or a coaster, or a problem child. Okay, so that is the easy part of the job of really recognizing people as to who they are. But the more important part is once you've recognized who these people are and where they fall in, what is it that you do about them? Okay, so let's have a little bit of conversation and discussion around there. So if you have somebody who's a striver in your team, how do you enable that person? Any ideas, thoughts?
We can give some kind of inputs to them and then some resources so that
Very
he
good.
can tap and
Very good.
take the
Very
help
good.
of the talented ones.
That's right. Very good. Very good. Exactly. Because this person is making the effort, but he's low on ability. And what he or she needs is hand holding, coaching, guiding, etc., etc. So that's great. But so let's move on to somebody who's a coaster, where the ability is high, but that person is not putting the required effort. How do you handle such people?
Some motivation by motivating them.
Yeah, but motivation is not a pill that you can give to them.
Challenge them, sir. Challenge
Sorry?
them. Challenge them to do. Challenge them to do work.
Very
Make
good.
it to
Very,
do work and kind
very,
of compulsions
very,
you have to give it so that
very
he
good.
can work.
Very good. So what you need to do with coasters is to monitor their performance. The challenge is not in their ability. The challenge is that they don't put the effort. And therefore, you will have to really monitor their performance, set out targets, goals, etc., saying that you're supposed to do X amount of research. Have you done that? Are the first step completed? If the first step is completed, have you move on to the second step? Similarly, if they're talking about running academic correction programs, really monitor them, because the challenge is not on their ability, but the challenge is more on their effort. So that's great. That's how you handle the striver and the coastal. How do you handle stars? People who have great ability and also put in great amount of effort.
Give them something challenging and working together and helping others to solve the problems.
Yeah, but that
yeah,
will be more.
That you give them something interesting, exciting, and also involve them in the work so that
Okay. Any
to
other?
motivate others also to do it.
Any other thoughts? How do you handle stars? I'm sure there are many star faculty amongst yourselves. How do you handle them?
By
Recognize
appreciating
them, appreciating them.
Very good, very good. So stars need to be left on their own, because neither they have an ability issue nor they have an effort issue, which means they are self-propelled, self-motivated. They will do things on their own. What you need to do is to ensure that you recognize them, applaud them, give them a pat in the back, reward them, etc., etc., and also use them as mentors for your strivers, because the strivers are the one who are lacking in ability, and therefore you can add on a couple of strivers, 2 stars, and say, why don't you take them under your tutelage and help them grow in their roles? Okay, so stars almost need to be left alone, because they don't want daily monitoring, or daily monitoring is not required with them. What you need to do is to recognize, except one thing I have seen, that oftentimes when you recognize people as stars, sometimes it gets into their head. So you'll have to be kind of balanced in the kind of support and recognition that you do. But I think once the person kind of matures, they get that the right results. And lastly, how do you handle problem child or problem children, who's neither got the ability nor the effort? Maybe it's a recruitment error, or I don't know what. There could be various reasons why this person is become a problem child. So how do you handle problem children?
Understand their problems and try to help them and
but that's
them.
what.
Give them something.
Yeah, that's what you do to a striver, no? Or to a coaster.
Yes, striver, sir. And problem solving is rather why that problem is that analysis should be there. Is it learning problem or execution problem, or what is the problem actually he is facing it?
Yeah, so in this case it will be both. So he's neither making the effort nor has the ability. So the best way to handle
motivated.
Yeah, motivation doesn't work with problem children, no, because they neither have the ability nor the effort. So the best way, and I don't know, it may be difficult in a government environment. If you really have a problem child and you know he or she is not a coaster or a striver, then the best way to manage them is to exit them from the system, saying that sorry, this is not going to work out for you. We've tried you for X number of months or X number of weeks or X number of years, and thank you very much. Maybe you'll find an additional opportunity somewhere else. And I've seen in my personal career a lot of people who we thought were problem children in one organization went out and did great for themselves in some other organization. Okay, maybe they've chosen the wrong path. Maybe academics is not what is good for them. Maybe they are better in some other role, etc. So as leaders in the academic community, we will have to take those hard calls and exit them out to the system. So do you think this kind of helps you understand managing academic teams?
Yes, sir, we understand.
Okay. The only thing is you have to be diligent about it. You have to be honest before you label somebody, and you will have to then work through that whole process. Never in the conversation should this thing happen that, oh, you've been branded as a coaster and therefore I'm keeping you under tight supervision, or you're a striver and therefore you need development.
Yes, sir.
Or so you need to be very careful about these, because these are people that you're dealing with. These are educated people with great degrees possibly who you're talking about, and therefore you'll have to manage in such a fashion that they are able to move. And the objective, of course, is to ensure that the coasters move towards the star block and the strivers move up, get into the star block. Okay, and the problem children are exited. Okay, so kind of reflect on this model and see what's the best way to manage staff who are reporting to you, people who are in your environment. Make sense? Shall we move ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let me share another model which is more specific to faculty rather than students. So if you look at a faculty member, they have multiple roles. But one of the core fundamental role of a faculty member, and that's why he or she is called faculty, is to ensure that they deliver the basic curriculum which they are tasked to do. So basic curriculum delivery is a fundamental or core role that a faculty member has to do. There can't be any compromises on that, because the reason why you were hired was to deliver that core curriculum that you're teaching, or both in terms of theory, practicals, extension work, field work, etc. And clearly that's a must for any faculty. And then if you go right, you will find people who are networkers. So these people, obviously, they deliver the curriculum very well, but they are great in networking with other people within the environment. So it could be research institutions, it could be other universities, it could be funding agencies like the DST or the DBT, etc. So they have great strength in networking. So they are kind of go-getters. They reach out to people. They make friends very quickly. They're able to network very well. They will invite people to your campus. They will themselves go out to other campuses. And in a university, there are several roles that need great networking. Can some of you give me examples of such roles?
Extension lectures and arranging the conferences and workshops, and rather interacting with the experts, and they themselves joining
Campus
like
placement
webinars
also.
like this.
Sir, campus placement also.
Yeah, absolutely. Campus placements, engaging with the external community, engaging with the external stakeholders, including government, funding agencies, etc. So these are roles, and oftentimes I find that they are undermined in a way. So what we need to do is to ensure that we identify people who are great networkers, because the proposition of your university or Central University of Haryana will be better left in their hands if they reach out. So if there is a industry engagement that you need to do, if you need to work out some internships for your students, we can work that out. If you're looking at funding of research projects, you could work that. So those people are great networkers. So that's on the right hand side or on the x-axis. If you go up on the y-axis, you have a group of people who I'm calling researchers. So researchers, people who are passionate about research, they will continue to do great work. Maybe they are a little inward looking, maybe they are not as great networkers, etc., etc., but they're very good in research. So in addition to the basic curriculum delivery, you will have these faculty who are great researchers. And I can give you several such examples, including Nobel laureates who are great in research but very poor in networking, etc., etc. So, can you think of some faculty? You don't have to name anybody, but can you think of such people who are great researchers within your university or in universities that you worked?
Sir, I am not a researcher, great researcher, but the network I can do.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's fine. Which is okay. But
Hello. Sir. Hello.
Yes.
How everyone who is working as a associate teaching, which is routine one and enjoy very much.
I think your voice is cracking. I can't hear you properly.
I have and collection
I'm sorry, your voice is cracking. I'm unable to hear. Hello? I think we were doing so well. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can hear you, sir.
The voice is clear, sir.
Okay. Yes, please. Yeah, but your voices are cracking.
Sorry.
I think I'm getting broken voices, so I'm not able to hear a word of what you people are saying. So, do you guys have a bandwidth issue there, or?
Sir, your voice is clear. I think.
No, I know.
Yes.
My bandwidth is okay, therefore.
So you can proceed, sir. I think.
But I can hear your voice now. So
Okay.
whoever was speaking earlier, I couldn't hear him.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So what was this question?
Sir, can I identify the person who is good at research is not in networking?
Yes, there are people like that.
Yes, yes.
So
I don't want to point out anyone, but I am lagging in the research, but I am good at networking.
That's good. That's good. I hope your immediate head of the department understands that and takes you that way. So that's the group of people who are called researchers. And then, of course, on the northeast corner, you have faculty who we can call star faculty, who are great teachers, deliver the curriculum. They are great networkers, and they are great researchers themselves. They, of course, are definitely star faculty. So in any environment, you will have such people in each of these groups. I think what is important for us is to ensure that we facilitate both these groups of people. The star faculty will take care of themselves. They are great teachers, they are great networkers, they are great researchers, and therefore a great asset to the university. Then you have this group of researchers. The way to support them and work out is to ensure that their potential for research is fully appreciated, and they are given enough and more resources to carry out their research so that they are able to come out with the best publications, the best patents, which can be monetized, etc., etc., and bring value to your university. Oftentimes, I've found that you can actually give them lesser teaching load if your university rules allow, so that they can spend more time in doing their research. Similarly, on the networker side, you will have to be liberal with letting them to travel, go to conferences. Obviously, researchers also need to go to conferences, but their ability to network. So if they say, I want to go and meet up with so-and-so in the industry or so in the government network, you must encourage them and not kind of hold them back. And then of course the staff faculty, as always, just encourage them, support them, and ensure that that works through. So does a model like this help you understand? Because different people are made differently. Eventually, the objective of every faculty member is to become a star faculty, but then work on your strengths, and the university should use your strength either in the area of research or in the area of network, so that you bring in value to each of these. Alternatively, some of you who are researchers believe that I'm not good at networking. Can I build some of those skills? Because research in today's day and age needs collaborative effort. And if you're not able to work that through, you will struggle. And similarly, if you're a faculty and if you want to grow, there has to be some amount of research quantum that you need to publish. Otherwise, your own personal growth could be a challenge in the point-based assessment system, etc., etc. Okay, so this is a model that you might want to keep in mind, and specifically for heads of departments and deans, to actually identify people where they fall, and therefore accordingly support them so that they are able to exploit the inherent qualities that they bring to the table. Okay, any quick questions on this before we move on to the next? No. Okay. Right. So let's kind of shift gears at this stage and look at a young graduate and look at the various things that we need to build to ensure that when they go out in the real world, they are able to do things what they are expected to do. Oftentimes, what we find is reports coming out from FICCI or ASSOCHAM saying 60% or 65% of your graduates are not employable. And therefore, there is a challenge around placements, etc. So some of these dimensions I have put in these elliptical boxes, in addition to a strong domain knowledge, which means the discipline that that person is studying or has taken admission for, there are other elements which are important for students to be. The top amongst them are strong communication skills. And I'm a strong believer that communication build skills is something which you don't inherit by birth, but this is something that can be built over a period of time. And oftentimes, as a university, we kind of ignore them and say, no, this person is bright, but he's not able to communicate, etc., etc. Sometimes language is a barrier, but sometimes mindsets, ability to speak in groups, ability to make presentations is a challenge. Then, of course, there is the challenge on the industry experience or industry relevant experience. And I'm going to share with you one or two things that we can do. And therefore, the need for us to bring in relevant faculty who bring in the kind of experience, because if somebody has only studied in university and therefore goes on to teach in a university, there will be some dimensions which will be lacking in that individual, no matter how good or bright that person is. And last but not the least, a sense of strong values, ethics, and team skills. Because at the end of the day, it is these things that is going to take you forward. And you might turn around and say, yeah, but I'm supposed to teach applied mechanics. How am I going to teach values and ethics? These are things that people see, students watch, and then they pick up. And if they find that the environment doesn't encourage them, they kind of go and pick up the wrong kind of habits and skills. And oftentimes I have found that in industry, while they hire you for your hard skills, which is your domain knowledge, etc., but most of the time when they fire you for your lack of soft skills. Could be teamwork, could be values, could be ethics, or it could be some other soft skill. And I think one of the reasons why this also happens, at least from a lot of context in the Indian environment, is that we focus a lot on individual excellence. So you have to be good in school, come amongst the top few percentile, and therefore you get into a good university. Then again, it's the same story. You have to be good to kind of go out and grab a great opportunity to either go for higher studies or to find an appropriate placement. And then at the age of 23, 24, depending on whether he's an undergraduate or a postgraduate, the world then turns around and says, yeah, individual excellence is fine, but now you're in the real world. And therefore, in addition to individual excellence, you need to be a team worker, you need to take people along, you need to kind of lead people, etc., etc. And suddenly, this individual who's been so bright and so good all these years suddenly find that the rules of the game have changed, and at the age of 23, 24, they are struggling to kind of keep up. Do some of you have similar examples of your students or your classmates?
Sir, in our state, Tamil Nadu, there are a lot of bright students, but they are lagging in the communication.
Sure.
Even though the polytechnic students are strong at technical knowledge,
right?
They are still lagging in the communication. That's why they are not getting the jobs like that.
And therefore, it is important for you to build those communication skills. And I can guarantee you, in a period of 4 years, while they're doing an undergraduate degree, that's more than enough to build that communication skills.
Yes, sir.
Some of the experiments that I've been associated with is, as soon as students join, you should assess their communication skills. Okay, and divide the class into 3 lots. One, who are great in communication skills, those who are okay in their communication skills, maybe they are okay in their written skills, but verbal skills that they are not strong at. And then the third group, who are poor both in written as well as oral skills. And oftentimes what happens is, when communication inputs are given to the class, is given to this whole lot together, and it is the brighter or better communication students who dominate the class, and the ones who really need the input get left behind. So my experience shows that if you segregate these 3 lots, which means those who are good and great, just leave them alone, saying you do not even come for communication facilitation courses. Those who are the medium or okay types, you should put them separately in a class, and those who really need help both in written, verbal, and other communication skills, put them separately.
Right, sir.
When you do that, then there are people with similar skills who are there in the same class, and therefore you will see, because there is nobody to run them down, because each one of their classmates is of a similar level. And I think that's the biggest service that you can do to these group of students, by ensuring that they are put in a class with other students of similar skill sets, and not get cowed down with somebody who's, and when a youngster is in 17, 18, there are peer pressures, there are pressures from friends, there are pressures from other students who come with great communication skills, etc. So as a consciously, if we can put that together, I don't know how far Central University Haryana focuses on communication skills. I think this is an area that really needs to be dealt with great gusto and vigor, because this is a skill that you can actually pick up and learn, rather than say that no, this person can never communicate, etc., etc. Okay, makes
Okay.
sense? Okay. And similarly, there are areas that...
Hello.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Hello,
Somebody...
sir.
Yes, please.
Hello, sir. Sir, in our college, we involve the students in event management, and they perform all the performances and social and functional, academic as well as institutional celebrations. They manage it everywhere, and that is they develop the communication skills, sir. They manage everything, and we just support them. This is how we are doing it in our college, sir.
No, sure. That's very good. That's very good. But the challenge is, for every volunteer who comes and manages these events, there are 5 or 6 who are not even coming forward. So I think one of the roles of the faculty members is, rather than discovering this at the time of placements, you should discover this in the year 1 when they join your college or university. Okay, and then help those people, because these people will normally be silent, will always be at the back of the class, and will never be inherently they might be very bright students, but because of their ability to communicate, they kind of take a backseat. So I think the onus is a lot on faculty to really identify who these people are, really engage with them, and support them in that process. Okay. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next area? Right. So if there are no other thoughts, let's kind of look at bridging the industry academia gap. Do you agree that there is a huge gap between what the industry expects and what the outputs of academic institutions are?
True, sir. True, sir. It's very much true. True.
Very much true. And what do you think are the reasons for the same?
Academia aims at content as well as knowledge, and but not the skill. But industry wants a skills, and they must be self-reliant, and they must be able to adapt themselves and to the environment and prove themselves. And whereas in the academia, it's about the knowledge content only seeing it, but not skill. That is a main problem that they are facing, sir.
Yeah, sure. That's one dimension. But even in terms of knowledge, what kind of knowledge are we talking about? Is it as relevant to the industry today, or this is something that somebody learned 10 years ago, 15 years ago? How often, and this is the point that we're going to discuss, are we updating our curriculum, etc., etc.? So if you look at, say, subjects like computer science, and if somebody is, say, 45 plus, for example, I have a cousin who teaches at IIT Delhi Computer Science, and I asked him, what do you teach today? And you know what he told me the other day? He says, anything that I teach today, I did not learn as a student. Okay, so every discipline may not be as fast evolving as computer science, but what you need to do is to ensure that people are updated both from what is relevant. Some things will never change. For example, the laws of thermodynamics will never change. So you could have learned it 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it doesn't really matter. But a lot of things have changed, and therefore the need for updation. And I think the gap is because no matter how bright you are, if you've never had exposure to the industry, you'll never be able to pick those things up. And therefore, to bridge the gap, one of the things that I find very useful is to send faculty for internships. While student internship is something which most universities and colleges do, very few people actually send their faculty for internships. Do you have a system at your university for sending faculty for internships?
Yes, sir. In our university, they are sending the faculty to the industry for 6 months, and they will be getting training, and then in turn they come back to college and then impart those skills, and which is relevant to the industry. Sir.
Sure. So I think that's good. That's good. In fact, BITS Pilani used to follow a model which was called Practice School 1 and Practice School 2. Practice School 1 used to be that 2-month industry immersion, but Practice School 2 used to be about 6 months on the shop floor in the industry or the relevant area that they are specializing in. And the way the faculty used to manage is to teach for 6 months in a semester and to work in the industry for 6 months. And it is in those 6 months that students used to go. But for whatever reasons, I think the number of builder factories have gone down, etc. So that program has kind of fizzled away. So we may not be as good or as efficient as those, but I think it's important for us. And this is something which is a challenge not just in India, it's a challenge across the world. Except that in some universities, they encourage people with industry background to come in and join as faculty, etc. So those could be exceptions. So you can have various things that you could do. It could be 6 months if you can afford. It could be summer internships. It could be winter internships. It could be short time projects, etc., etc. And what you should do is you should then try and see what are the things that I have picked up based on the theory that I learned and what is the practice, and then come back and share those back into your classroom sessions. It could be small caselets, case studies, examples that you enrich your students with. If you do that, then of course the quality of teaching and learning suddenly moves up. Students feel excited and motivated. And the best way to find that out is to talk to your recruiters and find out which are the areas that you find our students are having gaps. So you pick those areas and then ensure that those areas, the faculty themselves are made competent. Because to be honest with the faculty, if you've never worked in industry yourself, no matter how bright you are, very unlikely that you'll ever have many or some of those skills. Okay, but if you are lucky to have worked for some time, you can always pick up. And I can tell you, just 5 years of working in industry and then coming and teaching makes a whole lot of difference. If you've worked for 10, 15, 20 years, then it's a totally different thing. The other challenge, of course, is the Indian system, which doesn't promote movement between industry and teaching. There are very few universities. The government universities definitely really are really closed in that area, but some private universities have started doing some of those things. But that, I think, is very important to do, because until unless you have cross-pollination between industry and academia, we will always struggle to find the right talent pool that's coming out. Okay, so that's one way to bridge, is to first train the faculty in skill sets that are required, and you will quickly find that the bridging amount is not much. Maybe the concepts in any case the faculty are clear with, but what the current practices are something that they need to pick up. Similarly, if you look at the course or the course content, I think it's the same tragedy around what is it that you do to ensure that the content is as relevant. And in this slide, I've talked about some kind of examples where you could have an industry-run elective. It could be a 3-credit program in the final year, or it could be a specialization program of 30 or 40 credits covering the final 2 years of your classes, or it could be totally a co-branded program where the entire curriculum is jointly designed between the industry and the academia. And there are various models that you can choose, or you can pick and choose some of these areas that I've just talked about. I think here you need to be careful about two things. The first one is all industries are not great teaching environments. So you'll have to really identify who in the industry and who amongst the industry members have a great passion for teaching and learning. Just because somebody has 20, 25 years of industry experience, that doesn't mean, because I've seen people with 20, 25 years experience, you put them in front of a class, I think their material finishes within 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, they don't know what to say or speak. But there are others who may not have as much of experience, but they are great in engaging with students and bringing in the nuances of what is required in the industry. So these could be some models, and I'm sure there are other models that you can talk about if you have some practices at your campus. So can you give me an idea of what kind of industry linkages that you people are working on or are currently using?
So in our institute, they get the training in from Infosys from the first year onwards, and TCS, ION, they have the programs and they train them. And constantly they'll be training them all the 3 years. And then at the end, they put the kind of a competition. Those who are winning, they will be getting into the industry, sir. That's how they are doing it.
Sure. So it's not just about a few IT companies, but I think what we should also do is to ensure that the disciplines that you have on offer, which means the undergraduate and master's programs that you have on offer, all of them should have at least some component of industry linkages. Because if you don't do that, then of course you're not being fair to the students. And oftentimes I think faculty are accused of teaching what they know rather than what the student should be learning. Okay. Right. So we've kind of covered some of the areas in terms of academic leadership styles, engaging with people, industry linkages. What I've done here is to put some, I won't use the word provocative, but put some statements or hypotheses, and these are 6 of them. And maybe we can spend some time discussing each one of them and agreeing. So the first one I'm saying is that the date of your degree is the expiry date of your knowledge. Do you agree with that?
Very much, sir. Very much, sir.
Very much.
Very much. Very much.
And why do you agree? Why do you agree?
Because the thing is, theoretical knowledge you may be having it, but in real life like situation, how to use that, they have to learn it, and if not learning, then the entire degree is a waste. And that's why he has to be adapting to the situation and rise up to the expectations and fulfill that he is able to be successful, winner.
Sure.
That has to be linked up.
Sure. Any other thoughts on this? Any other thoughts saying that the date of your degree is actually the expiry date of your knowledge? I think one of the great things that societies will face in the next 30, 40, 50 years is the rapid nature of changing of knowledge. I'm not talking about information, but I'm talking about knowledge. And the reason why I'm saying that is there is some work that I had done with ENY, talking to various people across industry and academia, and we found that people like us who graduated in the 80s, in a working career of say 40 years, they had their own specialization from which they graduated, and they had to learn one more skill. And in most such cases, it was computer skills. But the current trends are showing that anybody who's graduating now and is going to work for the next 30, 40, 50 years will need at least 6 to 8 different skills. And the most challenging part of that is, of those 6 to 8 new different skills, maybe 3 or 4 haven't even been discovered yet. So as you go along and you are 10 years into your career, 15 years into your career, you will realize that these are skills I don't even have. And therefore, the word that I'm using is the expiry date of your knowledge, because one thing that you should be able to do is to inculcate in your students the ability to learn, relearn, and relearn. As long as you're able to do that, and in their mindset that they know, because oftentimes I find on the graduation day students go and burn their books or sell their books to a second-hand book dealer and saying, studies are all over, done and dusted. Those days are gone. And if you have to be confident. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Actually, it should be learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yeah, which is
Unlearn
what
unlearn is which is not useful. That has to be thrown out. And relearn. And relearn is to orient themselves to the new developments and the new skills. That is required.
Which is what Byju's has been saying a lot. But I think the key is what they are saying is you have to be a lifelong learner going forward. Gone are the days when you said, I did my master's in so and so subject 20 years ago, and that's it. It doesn't work like that because technology is changing, interfaces are changing, and new disciplines are coming up. So, branches like artificial intelligence or data sciences, which nobody talked about 7 years ago or 10 years ago, they are the in thing, etc., etc. So I think it's a recognition that you need to continue to update. And if that is one thought that you can leave your graduating students with, saying that your days of learning and studying are not over, but you need to continue to kind of build that up. Okay, let's move to the next one, which is academic toppers are the best performers in professional life. Do you agree with that? Do not agree with that? Any thoughts?
May not be, sir. May not be. Even rather, an average student may be a good performer. And academically, may be excellent. But if he is not showing the kind of skill that is required, then naturally it is not. It is not. The topper may not be the best person for the industry.
Sure.
Maybe a mediocre with a practical experience may be good for the industry. A student with a diploma, he may be excelling better than a BTech student. Sometimes later entries that students are coming, they are performing better. They have got a practical knowledge there. The industry wants that.
Good. Any other thoughts? Anybody else wants to share his or her views on?
Sir, if I may, I'm
Yes,
Aparna Samudra. I think this does not hold true always, because many times it's not only your academic skills, but many times your human management skills and your emotional quotient also matters to help you progress and flourish in your professional life.
Sure.
So somebody may be very good at academics and college, but professionally he might not do so well.
Sure. No, I think that's very well said. And oftentimes, I think one of the things that universities lack in is that they fail to measure some of these other skills which are required in real life. Exactly the point of things that you talked about. Okay, so it's important for us to kind of work through those areas as well. In fact, I'm a great believer that you should give students two sets of GPAs. One GPA for your academic performance and another GPA for your life skills. So if you worked or studied in university for 4 years or 2 years for your master's or whatever, 4 or 5 years for your PhD, you've been observed enough by your faculty, and therefore, obviously, your academic processes should allow that. You should rate people based on some of these other skill sets which are important. And I can guarantee you, industry will love it, because what industry need is these kind of skills much more than the technical skills, because technical skills will get outdated in a couple of years, and you will have to be taught again, learn as somebody said. So it's important for us to kind of manage that. So very well said, saying that there are other skills. So
sir, life skill or technical skill?
Both.
Both.
Both, because if you're able to do that, because what happens is when companies come to campuses for placement, the only indicator they have is their CGPA, which I'm not sure is the best indicator of somebody's performance. Let me share with you a very interesting story which one of my ex-colleagues had shared with me. So this person is, I know you must have heard her name, Nishi Vasudeva. She was the CEO and Managing Director of Hindustan Petroleum. And she studied in IIM Calcutta. And a few years ago, she was invited by her alma mater to receive the best outstanding student who has done very well in a professional life. Okay, so she went there, she received the award, and she was very curious because she was going back to the campus after many years. She requested the director there saying, can I go back and have a look at the old hostel room I used to stay, etc., etc. So he said, no problem. So they went around, had a look, and then they came back in the director's lobby. And you know, in these director's lobby, there are those boards which are usually there. I don't know whether your university has that. One board which says the list of gold medalists from IIM Calcutta. So right from 1966 or 67, whenever IIM Calcutta was started, they had a list of students, years, names, students who had got the gold medal. And then on the right hand side, there was another board which had the Distinguished Alumnus Award list, which had again list of students who have done very well and were awarded as distinguished alumnus. And you know what she told me, which stays with me even till today? She says, Utpal, not a single name on the left hand board which had all the gold medalists had any commonality with the right hand board which had the distinguished alumnus list. And that's when it really struck me, saying that while I'm sure they might have been great, big.
I'm speaking to Jyoti, ma'am. Yeah, this is Jyoti here. I know who's online. Madam, this is Professor Girish from JBS B School. Aparna, ma'am. Madam, gifts, madam. Aparna, madam, has given your number.
There's some crosstalk happening. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Okay. Yes, so the point that she was making is not a single name on the toppers list matched with those in the distinguished alumnus list. So it really kind of puts things on the perspective. And she says, before me was Indra Nui, who you must have heard her name. She was the CEO of PepsiCo, who was part of the distinguished alumnus, but not on the gold medalist list. So oftentimes, I think what we do is kind of, I'm not saying great academic toppers can never be great performers in real life. I'm sure there are some, but I think the way we are evaluating students based only on a certain set of knowledge, skills, and attitude maybe needs to be broadened a bit more so that some of these skills are also looked at, developed, and evaluated as well. Okay, let's move on.
Sir,
yeah, please.
Sir, CBSE has introduced a grading system, overall total personality grading system. It's not only academics, and all perspectives they see and grade. And that practice, if it is extended to technical education, it will be better, sir.
Sure.
That's a very nice one. That is good. CBSE is doing, sir. Up to 10th and 12th, they are doing it. If they extend it to the technical education, that will be wonderful. And that degree will be having value.
Sure.
Value addition.
Sure. Yeah, but the reality of the fact is, I remember when my younger son gave his class 10 exam, they had those sheets which evaluated on other parameters besides academics. But he went to get his class 11 admissions. They said that is fine, but tell me what is your CGPA. So while CBSE has done a lot of effort to evaluate the students, but at the next level of entry, all they're looking at is what's your CGPA, which is sad. So something like that. And my suggestion is that even if it is not a formal document to start off with, even if it is an informal document given by the university, I think it goes a great way in really defining who the person is.
And one more thing, sir.
Yes.
Cambridge University also is awarding degrees And there they mention clearly the skills they have it. The skills they are strong, they are weak, and needs improvement. What kind of improvement? That's a wonderful degree that they give it, and the degree will be having the value. The student will be learning to know where he lacks and the additional things that he can do it. That is a kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, but this is something that if you people believe in, should start incorporating in your own systems and processes. And rather than giving 10% marks for attendance, etc., which is important, don't get me wrong, but if you give 10% marks for some of these kind of skills, I think that will go a long way in really bringing students to the fore. Okay, let's move on to the next point, which is point 3, which has been talked about a lot, saying COVID has brought online learning to center stage and it's here to stay. Do you agree with it? Do not agree with it?
We don't want it to stay, sir, because now it is hybrid learning, and the flipped learning has come, and I think the methodology and the kind of testing and measurement has to change. The perspective has to change, and the student should be equipped with all the kind of thing, both the hard and soft skills, and the kind of resources that has to be given to them. It's not only they are from the textbook. Beyond textbook, they have to travel, take them to the real world, and also give them some kind of resources which they can work on autonomously. It's learners' autonomy that we have to ensure. Thereby, they will be learning something from themselves, and then they will be real leaders, and they will be sharing with others. That will be exciting.
Any other thoughts on online learning, teaching? I thought there'll be many thoughts on this.
Sir, here one more problem is engaging the students. We are not sure whether the student is engaged, because online learning, he will be in his own home, and where at the other end, and how to reach out and how to ensure it. This is a problem area. And testing also is a problem area, and measuring also is a problem area. And how to engage them in teamwork and team learning, that is missing. Emotionally, they don't get connected. Sir. These as emotional problems are there, psychological problems are there, technical problems are also there. It's affecting the online education. These need to be studied, because we require the kind of mindset to change this to something like television learning. Television is using many kind of programs they are giving it, and they should have education programs like UGC Net. UGC used to have it earlier, countrywide classroom. In the same way, the AICTE also has to sit in and to do something substantial work and give them the best, even to the rural areas. That should be done in the way that they reach out.
I'm looking at some other thoughts on online teaching learning. We've heard your thoughts, which is great. Any other thoughts? Any counter views? Are you happy with this? Yeah, please.
Sir, in Jammu and Kashmir, there is 2G network. Students residing in Jammu and Kashmir, they are suffering network issue problem.
Why Jammu and Kashmir? If you talk to people who do not have multiple devices, even in staying in Delhi, they have the same challenge. So why Jammu and Kashmir? Why go that far? In fact, one of the reasons why Delhi has started opening schools is because the deprived sections of society were struggling to have multiple devices. So if there are 2 or 3 children in a family and there is only one phone, they were struggling to take their classes. So clearly, obviously, resources is a challenge. But my question is not as much about resources, but it's more around the process of online teaching learning. Because whether we like it or not, it's here to stay. It was already picking up ground, and COVID has only hastened that process.
The students should be getting an opportunity to interact with the teacher before and after the class to clarify the doubts, and they must be engaged to do something creative work and challenging work. And that way, something you can engage them. Like Minty.com and other sources are there. We can have the quiz programs or something like that. See that they are engaged in learning or not, through learning or not. That is very much required.
Okay, so let's move on. If there are no more thoughts on online, let's move on to the fourth point, which is around curriculum updates, how often and who should do it. Can we have some ideas, thoughts on that?
I honestly believe that the faculty teaching should be involved in the editorial members who are preparing the course. It's not the experts, professors from the topmost universities, and it may not be reaching out to the common man and rural area. So in that case, rather better to involve the experienced teachers with all the training, and also give them opportunity to prepare the material which is interesting to the students, and they'll be learning itself.
Besides teachers, who else should get involved? Because if you have only teachers, there'll be a one-dimensional or unidimensional view to the curriculum. So who else should get involved?
The experts in the field, they can guide them and they can give them orientation and then prepare them and let them prepare the materials, because there's a kind of gap, teacher in the class and the materials prepared, and this gap has to be filled in, and the practical problems are to be addressed. The student problems are to be addressed, and if not, naturally the curriculum will not be functional.
Yeah. Any other thoughts of who else should get involved besides the faculty and the subject matter experts? Who else do you think should get involved in curriculum updates? Anybody from the group?
Sir, one industrial person.
Sorry?
Should be involved in design of curriculum. Industrial person.
Industry, okay, industry expert. So what you're saying is subject matter experts, the faculty, teachers, the industry experts. Who else?
And
sorry?
Can take student feedback.
Yeah, that is very much important, sir. Student is the center of this education system. Naturally, he has to be considered.
Yeah, so how do you formalize it? Student feedback is something else and curriculum update is something else. So who do you think should get involved in addition to industry expert, subject matter expert, and faculty? Do you think the alumnus have a role in this? People who have graduated from your universities, who know your system, who know what you teach and what you don't?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so maybe the alumnus is
yes,
and you can have both alumni, which means some senior people who have graduated say 10, 15, 20 years ago, or you can have people who have graduated 3-4 years ago. Okay, in addition to alumnus, what other student bodies can you engage with in curriculum updates? What about your existing students?
Existing maybe for senior batch of students.
Yes, that's right. So you can have senior students who you believe have a view on what the curriculum is, who understand the subject, who have additional passion for that area. So that's great. So these are something that you need to do. And how often do you do? I think Indian universities are notorious for not updating their curriculum. And I think there's a heavy price that we pay for that. Because what happens is that the brighter students, say the top 20% of the students, in any case, study on their own. So they will find their way out, they will have peer learning, they will form groups, etc. But the challenge is the percentile 80 to percentile 40. which is where the bulk of students lie. And there, if you look at where does India lack? India lacks not in the top 20 bright students or top 20% bright students. I think our average is far below the global average, which is percentile 40 to percentile 80. And if you are able to pull that up, I think the entire productivity around outcomes and student learnings can significantly change. And oftentimes, I think universities are accused of only supporting the brightest students. They don't give as much support to those who are below that threshold and therefore make a significant contribution as far as that is concerned. Okay, how often? I think it should be done, I don't know, every year, every 6 months, even if you don't make a change, but at least have that conversation with the alumnus, brighter students, and engage with the industry experts, subject matter experts, faculty, etc. It should be formally set up, discussions held, viewpoints put forward. Even if you are dropping an idea saying, no, we don't want to include this, that's fine. But at least it should be minuted very well and ensured that what the student should know is actually there in the curriculum. Otherwise, you'll be accused of, as they say, yellowing notes passed down from batch to batch, year to year, generations together, and not coming up with some of those changes. Okay, point 5 we have talked about. Let's move on to the last point, which is the reverse of the earlier point that I talked about, that good grades or people who've got good grades make good faculty. Any thoughts on that? And I want some new voices to comment on that. Any quick thoughts?
The personal effort play the crucial role to make good faculty.
So can you elaborate? Good point, but can you just elaborate?
Because faculty teaching, it depends on his potential and adopted methodology,
Sure.
and how he or she can correlate with the real examples.
Sure. What we are missing is passion.
Yeah, passion, dedication.
Passion, because oftentimes what happens is when faculty are recruited, we just test them on their knowledge, a bit on their skills, but we rarely look at their attitude towards teaching and their willingness and passion for teaching. Because I am a great believer, you may not have been as good a student, but if you are passionate about teaching, you will do a far better job than somebody who has got the best grades. And in some shape or form, that passion for teaching and learning is something that should be a key ingredient in recruitment of faculty. Do you agree?
Yes, sir. Faculty should be free mind also.
Could be what mind?
And faculty should be free mind without tension.
Free mind. Yeah, but in today's
not overloaded.
But today's day and age, I've heard faculty saying, do I teach or do I respond to the emails that come to me from the administration? So you're right in the sense that it has to be free mind. And the other point, of course, is that if you have to do 1 hour or 90 minutes of good teaching, you yourself should be at least studying for 3 hours for that 90 minutes. Because that's something that many people often kind of just leave it, especially those who have kind of put in a few years. And that's where the updates kind of go missing. So it's important for us to ensure that people who are passionate about the role, because I'm a great believer that the only thing that can be used to monitor faculty is peer pressure. No amount of the dean's appraisal or the director's appraisal can really make that. When there is peer pressure, which means one faculty member and the other faculty member, there is pressure amongst them to go and teach better, the best results come out. Okay, right? So
Yes.
so we are kind of
And
close. Yes,
sir,
please.
one more. The teachers can share their experience in the class with their colleagues in a free and frank manner. And some of the things that are exciting, maybe success, maybe failure, maybe anything, give a thought to them, and that will be brainstorming and then give new ideas. And how to make these students learn in a joyful mood. And it's not a burden. So how to make it exciting? And that can be discussed and that can be made rather like a group of teachers working together. So the kind of thing that if it can be done is a wonderful thing, because it can be discussing about the teaching methods and the testing methods and observations and different kinds of strategies they have. Like students have different styles of learning. In the same way, teachers do have different styles of teaching. So they have to be important, they have to be informed so that how to adopt that in a particular situation and become successful. That is really helpful, sir, because I'm doing it here in our institution, and really it is working because we share the things with an open mind, and we sometimes do collaborative teaching, and we observe and we bring something new and something exciting, something challenging, and sometimes the kind of excitement we see in the students, that is real happiness of learning, joy of learning. So that has to be aimed. It's not only something like you deliver something and which is not interesting to them, and make it interesting and exciting for them. So we should give a real life-like experience. That is a need of the hour, sir.
Sure. I think all very good points. I have no dissensions with any one of them. I think one of the key requirement of a faculty is that the faculty should be empathetic towards the student. And I have found that those who have empathy, and empathy doesn't mean being submissive to the student, and faculty who understand which are the difficult concepts to understand are the ones who are more conscious and will do a far better job. And some of them is very easy to kind of reflect back in your own careers and say, okay, I studied these 5 areas, but I have found second order differential equations most difficult to understand. And hopefully by that logic, many of my students will have the same difficulty, and therefore can we go and ensure that appropriate time, appropriate skills, appropriate methods are used for that. Okay, so with that, I kind of close out my session. Happy to take any questions that you may have. Sorry for the electronic glitch in the morning.
Sir, what about technical education taught in regional languages other than English? Is it advantageous or disadvantageous for the career perspective and the future perspective of the student?
No, from a career perspective, of course, it's a huge disadvantage. It's a huge disadvantage, but there is enough research which shows that the best learning happens in the mother tongue. Okay, and therefore, in a diverse country like ours, where you will have 5 or 6 languages in which people will have their mother tongues, in which single language will you teach? So if you go to, I don't know, an engineering college in Shibpur in Bengal, do you teach in Bengali? Do you teach in Hindi? Do you teach in Telugu? Do you teach in Tamil Nadu? So that becomes a far more serious problem. So whereas it's very easy to say, no, you must go and teach in the mother tongue, but it doesn't work like that, especially in a country like ours. For whatever reasons, good or bad, we have got this segue into higher education in English. Rather than improving communication there, if we are kind of adding more and more challenges, so then the second challenge would be those who don't understand the regional language. will have a huge disadvantage. So my
Thank
view
you,
is
sir.
that
Thank you, sir.
my view is while schooling, you have to start right from the beginning and then textbooks, evaluation, etc. But at this stage, I think students will be at a disadvantage if you move to regional languages. Okay.
Sir,
Right.
for me, there is one question.
Yes, please.
Sir, except computer science and engineering and IT department, the admission goes on reducing in all over India. Is there any steps by the government to revisit the syllabus like that, or how to improve the admission in that other departments?
No, which is not true actually. The arts or the liberal arts, the enrollment is growing actually. And if you see the overall number of students, they are growing. As I shared with you in my initial slides, today we have 4.
Your voice is not audible, sir.
Sir, your voice is not audible, sir. Sir, your voice is not audible, sir.
I think the connection is lost. Can we request the hosts to please look into it? Central University of Haryana, kindly look into it. We can't hear the resource person.
I am trying to connect him. अभी बता रहा हूँ उसका
be a problem.
Thank you Utpal sir.
Okay, welcome. Thanks a lot for joining in. Sorry for the technical glitch.
Thank you.
No problem, sir. Thank you very much for your enlightened talk, and it will be very beneficial for all the participants.
Thank you very much. Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you, sir. Thank you.
Sir, we just downloaded the Teachment app in our laptop.
Yes.
Automatically, we'll get the link, sir.
No, if you enroll, you.
Where we have to enroll, sir?
Where we have to enroll ourselves, sir, in Teachment.
Please share the link where we have to enroll.